I just want to do God's will.
What you're seeking is a blessing from God.
You must expect a miracle.
You have the power of choice.
Believe on the Lord Jesus Christ.
This is Life Today Live. It is Friday, and this is going to be a fun program. For years, you have probably heard Point of View radio, whether it's the short form or the long version, over 300 stations nationwide. Point of View has been hitting current events and issues and being, and not everybody's done this, but they have also stayed true to biblical principles, and I really appreciate that. Kerby Anderson is the guy that you hear, and he's with me today, and I'm pretty excited. We can talk about anything. By the way, chat is open. If you are watching us live, you can pop in the chat, throw your question in the ring, and you never know. We can go anywhere we want today. But there's a recent survey in the Christian Post and some other outlets, and it looks like this. And what it is doing is talking about what's going on with the younger. This is a thing that, it affects all of us. Future generations, the future of the church, of the nation. And there's some interesting things going on, but they are addressable. And that's what I want you to take away today, how you can have an impact on the younger generations. But Kerby Anderson, great to have you here on Life Today Live.
Randy, great to be with you and looking forward to getting into some of these issues.
All right. Well, so let's start with that survey. Talk us through what you guys looked for and what you found.
People that might be familiar with Pro Ministries, we've been around since 1973, so some people might know who we are. Actually, it's always been kind of a worldview apologetics ministry. But 10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago, we began to say, there seems to be a very significant decline in young people in terms of what they believe. So 10 years ago, the 2010 survey actually looked primarily at what we call today the millennial generation, those born after 1980. And we were looking primarily then just at born-again millennials. But now, more recently, we've done this new, which came out this last year, the 2020, not only the Generation Y, millennials, but Generation Z. And first of all, it gave us a chance to do some comparison now. Over 3,000 individuals surveyed. So it helped us not only look at what is happening inside the church, but is happening outside the church. And most importantly, Randy, one of the other things we really want to focus on is what is happening with what we call the unaffiliated. That sometimes are referred to as the nuns, the people that when they do a survey say atheist, agnostic, or no preference. They have no political or even religious preference, primarily, of course, religious or even church preference or religious preference, but it is kind of intriguing to look at that as well. So this was an attempt to try to put together to really do some comparisons and to maybe begin to answer some of the questions and maybe counter some of the myths that we've been hearing for many years.
Do you think that is this generational sort of thing cyclical, because you saw it in the 60s, and whether they say it or not, it seems like when kids hit early adulthood, a lot of times they're searching, they're looking, they don't necessarily want to be pigeonholed, and so they don't really want to identify, but a lot of people raise up that child in the way they should go. When they're older, when they're old, they don't depart from it. Has there been a really seismic shift, or is this sort of the way it tends to be?
And that is one of the key questions we wanted to try to ask and answer, because we've heard people say, look, at the age of 18, when a young person graduates from high school, he or she then goes off military, goes in the workforce, and almost without exception, they take a break from church. And so we understand that. But the argument has always been, well, yeah, but they'll be like the swallows to Capistrano. They'll come back to Capistrano once again. In other words, once they get married, they have children, they'll come back to church. And so that's a good question. Mm-hmm. And have we been able to do that? We found now when we do a comparison of the last 10 years that not only are they not coming back, a greater percentage of them are unaffiliated. Now, that leads to some people saying, well, recognize when they're unaffiliated, it might actually be born-again Christians. They might actually have Orthodox views, but they can't find a Bible teaching church. And I spend a fair amount of my time both in the Northeast and the Northwest every single year. those are not as religious as the Midwest and the South.
Mhm.
So is that a possibility? Well, it's a theoretical possibility. But again, when you do this survey and deeply go into it, you realize that those individuals that are